Good afternoon. After relations nearly reached a breaking point, U.S. President Donald Trump announced he will meet with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on August 15th in Alaska. The meeting will mark the first face-to-face encounter since 2019 during Trump's first term. During the announcement, Trump floated the idea of a potential territorial swap between Russia and Ukraine as part of a peace deal, a proposal Kiev swiftly rejected. In response to Trump's announcement, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky firmly dismissed any plan that would force Ukraine to cede land, declaring that the war can't end without us. The announcement comes as U.S. officials brief European leaders and Ukrainian counterparts on a proposed plan originated from Putin's meeting with Steve Witkoff, a ceasefire in exchange for significant territorial concessions by Kiev. With tensions high and Ukraine standing firm against the proposed terms, can the upcoming Alaska summit realistically help end the war, or could it make things worse? Welcome to Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are set to meet next week in Alaska as Trump seeks a peace deal that could involve significant territorial concessions from Ukraine. According to the Washington Post, the meeting will center on negotiating a truce to end the war that began 3.5 years ago. Speaking to reporters, Trump said that any agreement might require Ukraine to cede territory to Russia. Momentum towards the summit has picked up since Wednesday, when Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff held a 3-hour meeting with Putin in Moscow. During the meeting, Putin presented a ceasefire proposal demanding major territorial concessions by Kiev and a push for global recognition of its claims in exchange for a halt to the fighting. The newspaper added that Russia continues to insist that any peace agreement must acknowledge its control over Crimea, annexed in 2014, and 4 other regions in eastern Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky firmly rejected Donald Trump's suggestion that Ukraine might need to give up territory to achieve peace, emphasizing that any decisions made without Ukraine's involvement would undermine efforts to end the war. As reported by the New York Times, Zelensky's stance could frustrate Trump, who sees a peace deal, even one unfavorable to Kiev, as a major foreign policy goal. Trump has previously criticized Ukraine for being unwilling to compromise. Zelensky, however, expressed readiness to work with Trump and international partners on a lasting peace that isn't dictated by Russia. The New York Times noted that Zelensky's position reflects widespread opposition in Ukraine to territorial concessions. A recent poll showed just over half of Ukrainians oppose giving up land under any circumstances, though support for concessions has grown to 38%, up from 10% 2 years ago. right, delving more into this, we're joined from Washington by Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, Executive Director of Global Foreign Policy of Washington, and from Moscow, Mr. Alexander Jarjiskin, former Russian ambassador to Lebanon and Yemen. Welcome to you both, gentlemen, and let me here start by Mr. Justin. And Mr. Justin, given the rising tensions between both Putin and Trump, what could be the significance of this meeting now, especially considering it's their first face-to-face encounter since 2019?
Well, good evening, Mona. This is going to be an awkward meeting. What we're seeing right now is Vladimir Putin basically kind of giving Donald Trump a strong arm and keeping him at arm's length when it comes to the situation in Ukraine. Quite frankly, Vladimir Putin doesn't really have to meet with him. There was even questions, would he meet with him? And the fact that Donald Trump is suggesting that they meet, and they meet without the presence of a Ukrainian delegation in the room, just legitimizes Vladimir Putin in the situation. Vladimir Putin is going to say that he wants the Donetsk region. He's going to maintain control of Crimea. And quite frankly, he's got a slight advantage in these talks over Vladimir Zelensky. So I think the expectation is going to be Trump is going to want to see a quick end to it so he can claim the win, and Putin's going to want basically a third of Ukraine in the eastern part of the country.
But here Trump announced that the meeting just as his ceasefire deadline for Russia passed. Now, without any kind of deals. Now, why do you think Trump chose to meet with Putin instead of imposing the sanctions he had previously threatened with?
Because the situation right now globally, both economically and strategically, gives Vladimir Putin a slight advantage. Trump's tariffs policy has kind of backfired on him. He's been maneuvering the deadlines and the threats, and quite frankly, now a lot of countries look at Donald Trump as crying wolf on this. So Vladimir Putin gets to take advantage of that, and the big thing here is the BRICS alliance. Any sort of sanctions, secondary sanctions, just allows the BRICS alliance to continue to solidify, continue to grow an economic and strategic hold globally. So, I think, the U.S. Has kind of missed the mark on what the expectations are as far as how much strength and how much strength and how much sway they have over Vladimir Putin and the situation in Ukraine.
Right, we'll get back to you. Let me here go to Ambassador Alexander. And Ambassador Alexander, Your Excellency, the meeting comes amid growing tensions between both leaders. Was Steve Witkoff's recent meeting with Putin a positive signal that influenced Trump's decision to pursue direct talks to stabilize the relations? Again, let me here repeat the question. Ambassador Alexander, the meeting comes amid growing tensions between both leaders, Trump and Putin. Was Steve Witkoff's recent meeting with Putin a positive signal that influenced Trump's decision to pursue those direct talks to stabilize relations?
Of course, yes. And we were expecting a positive outcome. And with this meeting, this actually exceeds expectations, and we have high expectations before the meeting, and of what it looks that within 3 hours. The talk that they had, it was actually a fruitful one that led to positive outcomes and positive expectations on both sides. And this is how the meeting was suggested, because Putin meeting to reach tangible expectations. So yes, we expect positive outcomes. And of course, from Russia's side, the most important thing is that the Russian American talks needs to be wide, and it needs to get them what they need internationally, and not just with Ukraine. Talking about Ukraine is just a part of what they aim for, but actually they want to reach understanding with Trump's government about the political cases that they have in general, and cooperation on manufacturing. And so it looks like that we are gradually walking in the right direction.
Let me here ask you specifically, from your point of view, what does Putin hope to gain from the upcoming summit with Trump?
With this summit, with this upcoming summit, of course, this is, this is a little early to talk about the results, because this actually depends on both presidents. And on the other hand, we can say that it is a very long road, and so it is very important how they will handle it, and not just the agreements that they will have. And actually, about the tangible results, it looks like we need to find something common between Russia and America.
But here, Your Excellency, would you just give us a hint of what could be acceptable for Russia, points that could be acceptable so the meeting would be seen as successful?
There are some things that are related to Ukraine not joining the military agreements of Russia, and I think this will actually happen without Trump agreeing to this. And the second thing is that the lands, in the land thing is very important right now internationally, and for America and for Russia too. We have 4 areas that are now they belonged to Ukraine before, but now they belong to Russia according to the Russian constitution. And so we don't think that Putin will actually change his mind, but with the Russian military making progress, we actually think that today's agreement, actually this for the West and for Ukraine, this will be better. If it will be like after 2 or 3 months, maybe 6 months, this needs to be clear to Kiev's government and its allies. And so the common point here is the rules and conditions that Russia will present, of course, without a ceasefire, without the Russian military moving into the other Ukrainian areas.
Definitely, Ukraine has rejected ceding any kind of territories, but we'll come to that point. Let me go to Mr. Justin. Mr. Justin, what specific outcomes would constitute a tangible success from the Trump-Putin summit in terms of ending the 3-year long war?
It's a great question, Mona. I think our analysis is that a sustainable, valid, long-term ceasefire to allow constructive discussions to continue would be viewed as a success. I think the idea that military operations could be held off, but it has to be done in good faith. What we've seen in previous uh, agreements, and I use that term loosely, is they will stop for 24, 48 hours and then Russia will continue its aggression. Right now, when it comes to any sort of ceasefires, Russia doesn't have a lot of legitimacy here. But I think if they can come up with a deal that will allow a ceasefire to hold, that would be viewed as a major success. The one thing I do want to point out here is it is very difficult to start making deals and expect there to be buy-in from all parties involved when one of the major parties, in this case Ukraine, isn't even at the table. This has been a situation. This has been a page out of the Donald Trump foreign policy playbook, even going back to his first term. You go back and you look at the situation in Afghanistan. The Trump administration did a deal with the Taliban, didn't include the Afghani central government, a major player. We're seeing, we've seen discussions between Israel and the U.S. and leaving the Palestinian people out. They'll include Hamas, but leave the Palestinian people out. In this case, again, you cannot have a major bilateral discussion trying to come up with a peaceful solution to a long-going conflict now that is ongoing, and expect there to be buy-in from everybody if one of the parties at the table isn't even at the table. And that is a concern. And the reality is, if you look at the comments put out today by French President Macron, by other EU leaders, there's starting to be continuing growing success and calls for backing Ukraine in this. That doesn't help the U.S. position as trying to be the great peacemaker in all this. And every day we continue to lose ground in that status.
All right, let me go here to Ambassador Alexander. As we were speaking, or as we said before, given Zelensky's rejection of Trump's remarks, does Russia's insistence on recognition of its control over annexed territories make a peace agreement fundamentally untenable?
I said
do you want me to, shall I repeat the question again? Right. Let me here ask you, Ambassador Alexander, given Zelensky's rejection of Trump's remarks, does Russia's insistence on recognition of its control over annexed territories make a peaceful agreement fundamentally untenable? Right, until we fix the technical problem, let me here go to Mr. Justin. And how does Zelensky's rejection of territorial concessions challenge Trump's proposed approach to ending the war?
Quite doesn't. I mean, for Donald Trump to make a unilateral statement like that is almost unacceptable. Basically, what Donald Trump just said was, look, we're fine with Russia taking Donetsk and Luhansk without even checking with the government that actually has that inside their sovereign borders. The idea that annexation of Donetsk and Luhansk is even on the table is going to be a bitter pill to swallow by Vladimir Zelensky and a large number of the Ukrainian population. And quite frankly, Vladimir Zelensky actually has a little bit of a chip that he can play right now. If you look at some of the discussions that are being put out there regarding, we know that a big point that that bothers Vladimir Putin is the idea that Ukraine would become a member of NATO. There's an offset to this. There's a way that 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 Ukraine could be part of, or at least of uh, embrace the security of European and NATO partners, and that is becoming part of the EU. And that is now a discussion point. It doesn't say NATO, but it says if Ukraine has the possibility of joining the EU, is that a solution? So there's a lot of geopolitical chess going on right now. But the bottom line here is giving up, and the U.S. actually offering up Donetsk and Luhansk is kind of an insult to the Ukrainian people, and we're writing checks, diplomatically that, quite frankly, we can't cash.
Right, if the technical problem is solved, let me get here back to Ambassador Alexander. And how do you view Zelensky's rejection of Trump's remarks on territorial swap? Your Excellency, can you hear me?
There is no, Russia isn't having a cold feet. They need to continue with this, and they want to still have the 4 areas that they have occupied. They want to keep them, and Russia will not back out from this request. And so this actually needs to be understood by everyone, because right now we are talking about a phase that isn't just about what's happening today. We are talking about what's going to happen in half a year or a year, and Russia said that they are ready to continue the wars until they get everything that they said in the beginning. And so everyone needs to understand, the West needs to understand that Russia will achieve all its goals. Today they have only 4 areas, but after 6 months it will not only be 4 areas, it will be like 6 districts. And so this is what's happening today. And we think that Trump wants to get rid of this war, and he keeps saying that this war is Biden's war and not Trump's war. And so he knows, and everyone knows, all the Western leaders know that this uh, the West against Russia, and if America withdraws from this war, the Western stance will actually be very weak. And so today, if they agree to Trump's, strategy to settle things with Russia, it will be better for everyone. But if they keep on doing this, if they want to keep on with the war, this will actually only lead, naturally, to lots and lots of consequences, to money problems, etc. But this will not be beneficial for the Western countries and for the rest, actually. And I think that Trump realizes this, and that's why he talks to Putin positively.
Right. Back to you, Mr. Justin. And from your point of view, to what extent can Trump influence or pressure Ukraine and its European allies into accepting terms that may undermine Ukraine's sovereignty?
Well, it's becoming more and more difficult. The back and forth, the flip-flopping by the Trump administration in its position in supporting Ukraine, whether it is, especially after the events that happened in the Oval Office and that tense discussion that occurred between Zelensky and Trump.
But do you think do you think President Trump would have the leverage, or he has tools that he may convince, in a way or another, Ukraine and the European allies to accept proposals, the Russia proposals?
No. Here's the situation that the Trump administration has painted itself into, Mona. Is the fact is we are seeing the EU and our EU partners literally circle the wagons behind Vladimir Zelensky in Ukraine. And one of the things we got to be clear about that has not yet been said today, and with all due respect to the ambassador, this is not Biden's war or Trump's war or Obama's war. Let's be clear. This is Vladimir Putin's war. His invasion of Ukraine was unprovoked. It was illegal. It violated UN Charter. It violated international law. There are now red notices out on Vladimir Putin for the war crimes he's committed in his unwarranted and unprovoked aggression against the Ukrainian sovereignty. So, the reality is we have to look at this for what it is. It is a situation now where, we're in a diplomatic fight to try and maintain as much Ukrainian sovereignty. Because again, the Ukrainian people and Vladimir Zelensky didn't ask for this. This was forced on them by Vladimir Putin and the Russian armed forces. So, Donald Trump, his back and forth in support isn't going to hold a lot of water with either the Ukrainians in trying to force them to come to a deal. And then our EU partners are also going to keep arm's length from Donald Trump on this because they fully back the Ukrainian defense, and they fully back the idea that this was started and continued by Vladimir Putin and by the Russian armed forces. That's the reality. And we're seeing that become a tighter message between EU and the alliance between the EU and Ukraine and Kyiv. So as long as that happens, right, Donald Trump is going to have to really think his positioning on this moving forward.
Right. Briefly, I'm getting back to you, Ambassador Alexander. What's your comment on what Mr. Russell said? Mr. Alexander, what's your comment on what Mr. Russell said?
أنا لم أسمع جيدا ما قال الضيف فبالتالي لا أستطيع تعليق عليه here.
All right. Until we get again Ambassador Alexander, let me get back to you, Mr. Justin. And let me tell you here that, on the other hand, the Russians have already said that, on the contrary, who started the war was not the Russian side. And the NATO and wanting to spread the ballistic missiles on the Ukraine or on the borders has prompted Putin to act as such. So what do you think?
Well, I mean, Mona, I think the entire global community looks at that as nothing but a continuation of the unsubstantiated and, quite frankly, false narrative coming out of Moscow. Everybody knows that this was not started by Ukraine or as some sort of threat that Ukraine was going to be this haven of ballistic missiles that are going to be placed in there aimed directly at Russian territory. This is a power grab by Vladimir Putin. I've said it before and I will continue to say it again. Vladimir Putin has one agenda and one agenda only. That is to expand the sphere of influence, the power of the Russian Federation, and bring Russia back to its old Cold War days. He is expecting
Right.
Russia that looks like under Stalin.
Right, clear what you're saying here, Mr. Justin. However, we remains here to be seen what will happen in this very important, much anticipated meeting. That was Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, Executive Director of the Global Foreign Policy of Washington, and from Moscow, Mr. Alexander Jarjespkin, former Russian ambassador to Lebanon and Yemen. We thank you both for sharing your valuable insights here. And I guess that brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always unveils the complexities of our changing world. Many thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.